Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hairy News. Chewy, good evening to you, sir.
How you doing, Pat? How you doing, chat?
Yeah,
I'm
doing well.
The whole works.
We have you got silencers on those finger guns?
No,
Right,
no,
okay.
Loud and proud.
Had a cracker day in Dunedin. It was one of those days. I was just talking. I've got a boarder living with us at the moment. He's from Australia, and we're trying to explain the weather in Dunedin. And I said there's two things about the weather you need to learn. Winter, the weather is better than summer. Colder, but better. More clear days, less rain, sort of thing. My opinion. And the anomalies with Dunedin weather is one day it'll be 28 and the next day it'll be 11. You don't get that consistency all the way through. But then you get days like today, which were great, where it's a mid 20s plus, and the evenings are like 15. So you have a really nice, hot, warm day where you can be outside and stuff, but the evenings are cool enough that you don't sweat in bed. It's kind of a perfect Dunedin day today. Don't know how you feel about that, Chewy, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, I was talking to some tourists today that were going on about the weather, and I was like, I'm glad that you're here for the 2 weeks of summer. It's really good to have you. Certainly going from the middle of winter in San Francisco at 15 degrees, coming back to Dunedin in the middle of summer, raining 14 degrees. Was a good, just ease me back in before it hit me with this stuff. It was good.
I have a question for you, Chewy. This is the big question of the night. Sometimes I get these questions in my head and I go, man, if I was still doing talkback, this would go for hours, and it would. When you drive your vehicle to work, do you charge your employer for bringing your vehicle to work? So do you say to your employer, I bought my car with me today as an extra $30 for today? Do you do that?
I do not.
So why are tradies think they're allowed to charge a vehicle fee, pay for their van, so they can drive it to your house to charge you an hourly rate to do a job? Now, I actually understand everyone does it, but I'm really interested genuinely in this question. And we're not going to do it like that tonight, unless maybe I'll do this as a topic later in the week, or maybe on Thursday night we'll open up the lines. But I put this out to Twitter not too long ago, and I've had a couple of brilliant answers to that. Simon said, yep, local plumber charges van hire while on the job. However, I'm not allowed to drive/use it. I think that's a good response. And someone else says, tell them you'll pick them up then. I think that's a good response as well. But genuinely, I had a tradie around on Friday. No problem. Well, we'll talk about that in a sec. And I asked them now on the phone, because I've had one of those instances where I need a job done by a plumber, and they have two people turn up, but it's a one-person job because two people are in the van, and you get charged for two people for the hour they're there, whilst one of them just twisted the knobs and the other one sucked his thumb. So I always ask. And I asked about the van hire, and they were like $35. I'm like, okay, well, I guess so. But I've been thinking about it all weekend. So that's my question to you. Is it ethical? Is it okay? It was a plumber that came and saw me. I'm not going to say who it is, obviously.
No. Look, I've had a similar thing. A while ago, we had a leak under a garden bed, and we're like, where the fuck is that coming from? So we call a plumber, and they came around, and exactly what you described, right? A van, two dudes. One of them was apparently an apprentice.
Yeah.
Now, the apprentice did all of the work, and the other guy, the obviously licensed plumber, just watched him. And then when we get the bill, it's all itemized like that, and you can see the hourly rate that they're charging out the apprentice and the hourly rate that they're charging out for the fourth person, and exactly what you described, vehicle charge.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, having an itemized bill is fine, right? But I don't necessarily need to see how the sausage is made. Like if they just said, "Yep, cool, urgent call out fee. We were there for an hour. We needed to use this widget. Here's your bill," and it was the same amount as what they itemized. Vehicle, apprentice, plumber, widget, that sort of thing. It's almost like more information is worse. Like, because you go through and you go, hang on, wait, what? Vehicle charge? Well, of course you need to come in. But you're not coming on horseback.
But and this is the thing, right? Like Kiwi Rob has said, you don't think they should pay for the fuel pap. But the question is just the same. When anyone watching, when you drive your car to work, where you get paid by your work for most people, I'm sure some sales reps obviously get there, but most people drive their own personal car to their work, their business that they're working for, the way they earn money, the person signing the check, which in this instance is me, doesn't then pay for their fuel to come in. Obviously, there are other ways they could do it. They could charge a higher hour rate, etc., which I'm fine with. But I just think it's a bit cheeky. I think this vehicle fee thing is a bit cheeky. And I think that, like I say, anyone else doesn't get to charge the one paying them, which for most people is their workplace, for bringing their car to work. They get in their car and they drive to work and then they get paid. But a tradesman gets in their car and charges you to come to their work, and then you pay them again. I just think it's. I don't know whether unethical is too strong a word. They didn't
tell you that. You wouldn't even think about it. Another one I've seen is, that they're there for 2 hours, right? That includes their travel time from the depot to your place, and then after the job, and then back again. I think that's completely fair, right? The hour starts from when they leave the depot.
I don't agree with that.
No, because they can't do anything else. And you might live way the fuck out of town. I think that's fair.
Well, let me tell you this, right? And obviously I'm not going to say who it was. And I'm actually really happy with the job. That's the first thing. But I got the invoice today and it was an hour and a half of labor. He was in my house for 21 minutes. And I know that because I was like, this seems a bit long. So I went back and looked at, an hour and a half, dude. We live in Dunedin. What, did he come from Oamaru or something? So an hour and a half of travel time. That's an hour and 9 minutes more than he was here. And I'm just like, so now this is the thing, right? Okay, so you get to charge the vehicle fee or the travel time. You don't get to do both. You don't get to charge for a vehicle to turn up and for me to pay you. So now I have to pay for you to bring your tools and pay you while you're driving there so I can pay you to do a job that I've called you for. That's too much. That will drive. If they say it's the travel time, I'll be like, what did he come from? Was he out at Waihola? Where was it from? I mean, an hour and 9 minutes on top. And the other thing, Chewy, is the reason I don't agree with that is it's horseshit. Because they don't come from the station to you and back to them. They come from the next job, which is 5 minutes around the corner to you. And then they go to the next job. And then they go to the next job. There's no plumber in the world who goes base job, base job, base job. That's not how they work. That's why I think it's all shit. Anyway.
There we have it, people.
I was going to talk about Israel and Gaza. I was going to talk about Israel and Gaza, but this is now
a more important things to talk about. Plumbers.
I would like to talk about this for the next 55 minutes. No, I wouldn't at all. I'm finished. That was just my little thought for the night. People are welcome to share their thoughts on that. If you think that's fair enough. What about that? We live in Dunedin, right? So for me, basically to go from where I live, which is on the northern side of Dunedin, to South Dunedin, without getting on the motorway and going to Mosgiel, is what, Chewy? 18 minutes? Maybe 20?
Oh, yeah, tops. Yeah.
And these plumbers are based in central Dunedin. So they're probably a drive to their base is probably 12 minutes from my house.
Like, I get your point. I'm going to stick with the fact that an itemized bill is great. You don't need to itemize fucking everything because every line item that you put on the invoice, people are going to nitpick just like we're doing now. And if they just went plumbing job, there for an hour, I used a widget, I brought my apprentice, that's it. And it was the same price, we wouldn't be talking about it.
Let's start talking about some things far less serious, shall we? Like the UN court decision over the weekend of South Africa versus Israel. seems to me, Chewy, that both sides are celebrating on some level and both sides are refusing and rejecting this decision. It feels a little bit like
Israel's celebrating.
Well, it feels a little bit like kissing your sister. You know, some things were there that seemed they should be and lots of things weren't. We won't really get too much into it. We'll just play it. But obviously, we all know that the win, I guess, for South Africa was the acknowledgement from the courts that the wording they used was to stop killing innocent civilians or stop killing civilians, which is a war crime, but they didn't say stop war crimes. And they also talked about not allowing it to become a genocide, which is one step away from it is a genocide to it could be, if you kept going, a genocide. So let's have a listen to the story from the weekend, and then we'll I have a few more things to show you about this, including, you know, why it's not okay to say from the river to the sea for the Palestinians, but it's completely okay above reproach for Netanyahu to say from the river to the sea, which he said over the weekend. So let's have a look.
A historic ruling by the UN's top court has demanded Israel does everything it can to stop genocide taking place in Gaza. But judges at the International Court of Justice in The Hague stopped short of ordering a ceasefire. Israel, South Africa and Palestinians welcomed the ruling, even though no one got exactly what they asked for. Europe correspondent Lisette Raymer has the latest.
Just hours before the World Court handed down its ruling, the streets of Yemen were packed with people. With banners in one hand and weapons in the other, thousands rallied.
That's a pretty impressive looking number of people. You know, however, whatever it is, whatever they're saying, whoever the group is, you know, if it was a Rugby World Cup final, whatever, that is an impressive group of people to be speaking with one voice in one place.
Around the Palestinian flag. We are standing with the Palestinian people, with our blood, our souls, our hearts, says this protester. In Gaza, the wait for a verdict looked different. A starving scramble for what aid managed to get through. Gunfire is heard at this distribution point, and the war-weary grab what they can carry, and they run. It is this chaos and cruelty that the World Court wants to end.
The court is acutely aware of the extent of the human tragedy that is unfolding in the region and is deeply concerned about the continuing loss of life and human suffering.
The judges of the UN's top court convinced enough to demand Israel act immediately to prevent a genocide, but not enough to answer the cries of pro-Palestinian supporters outside. Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! A ceasefire has not been ordered.
Israel has an inherent right to defend itself. The vile attempt to deny Israel this fundamental right is blatant discrimination against the Jewish state, and it was justly rejected.
The accusation.
Please have a go, Chewy. There's more to come, obviously, but you've got something you want to throw in now?
Here we are, months after the initial terrorist attacks against Israel, right? And we're still talking about the right to defend.
Yep.
They have been defending since day dot.
Yeah.
It's all been offensive.
Yeah. Yeah. Approaching 4 months.
4 months. And what have we gone over the 30,000 dead yet?
Well, that's the number that was being spoken about in the weekend.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And then we'll just chuck in the fact that it's discrimination against the Jewish state.
Yeah.
Like that's exactly what they're capitalizing on, the people's fear of criticizing Israel for their actions because it's a Jewish state.
Yeah.
It's not a criticism of Jews, it's a criticism of their government, their military, and their decisions.
Well, it's how the terminology is used, isn't it? Because if you're critical of anything to do with Judaism, then you're criticizing Jewish people or the Jewish state, which of course leads to a very short line to anti-Semitism. But they're very clever with the words they use, rather than saying critical, as we've been the whole time, of Israeli action, of the IDF action. I don't know if we've ever said the word Jewish state or Jewish offensive. Might have slipped out a couple of times because sometimes they're interchangeable, but I mean, we've always been very clear this is about Israel and Israeli armed services and Netanyahu. It's not about Judaism. It's not about the Jewish faith. It's about the Israeli people and the Israeli government primarily in charge of these actions.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do some more.
Accusation of genocide is still being considered, but there won't be a verdict for years. So, in the meantime, a list of emergency measures has been imposed on Israel, allowing both sides of this war to claim the ruling as a victory.
Yeah.
The ICJ judges assessed the facts and the law. They ruled in favor of humanity and international law.
The court has ordered Israel to stop killing and injuring Palestinian civilians.
Which is a war crime.
Yeah, which they've immediately done, haven't they, Pat?
Yeah, 100%, which is a war crime. So this is why Palestinians and Palestinian supporters are saying this is a victory, because the courts have told them to stop committing war crimes without using those words, right? Because that's what the killing of innocent civilians is in a time of war, if this is even war. I mean, I think most people would look at this and go, this doesn't look like a war. This doesn't look like two sides coming together and fighting, on the front line. But, to use that term.
A war is when you have two militaries fighting.
Yeah.
I only see one.
Yeah.
That footage that you just saw of that jet dropping a couple of bombs, that is an F-35. That is absolutely top of American supplied stealth weaponry.
Yeah.
And they are bombing cultural sites, refugee camps, schools, hospitals. Absolutely disgusting.
Yep. All right.
To ensure humanitarian aid can enter the Strip, to prevent and punish incitement to commit genocide, and to ensure no evidence of possible genocide is destroyed. Israel is also expected
Good luck with that.
to provide proof it's doing all the above.
The State of Israel shall submit a report to the court on all measures taken to give effect to this order within 1 month as from the date of the order.
But the court has no power to actually enforce its rulings. Where is the humanity? Where is the mercy, this Gazan woman cries? Knowing tomorrow is unlikely to look any different than the sorrowful day she's just endured. In London.
So the regular suspects in New Zealand were straight on to Twitter to talk about, so now that they've ruled it's not a genocide, is everyone going to apologise? It's not what they've said. They've said the decision on genocide will take them years to come to, and that Israel has to make sure it 100% doesn't ever become a genocide if it's not one already. I mean, that's my addendum at the end, but they haven't said it's not a genocide. They've said that ruling will have to come in the future. And it's heartbreaking. I've got some stuff to show you as well, Chewy, about one of the things that Israel's been ordered is to allow aid to get in. I'm going to show you a story shortly about what happens when they try to get aid in at the end of last week. But for now, anything else you want to pick up on that? I mean, I know you could talk about it for an hour, but immediately.
Yeah, I think a lot of people put a lot of hope on this court ruling that somehow it was going to change something.
Yeah, be the king, so to speak.
Yeah, and it wasn't, because it is a toothless organisation, and that's the problem. Whenever there's been trials of war criminals, when they've actually had someone in the dock at the Hague, from World War II on to more recent times, it has always been after there is a win. After World War II, you gather up all of the Germans that did all the horrible, terrible things that they did, because their country had been completely capitulated.
Yeah.
And you could get your hands on these guys and put them in the dock and go, you did this, and here's the proof. Cool, court ruling, sweet, hang them. And the same when you look at more recent things like in the Serbian conflict and all the horrible things there. Those guys got captured. Nobody's invading Israel. Nobody's going to go up to Netanyahu's house, put him in handcuffs and drag him to the Hague to answer for what he's done. Nobody's going through the IDF to find out the commanders that are doing, issuing these orders, authorizing these strikes, picking these targets. No one's going through the frontline troops who are just going roughshod through a civilian population like it's a war zone. So it's justice denied. And meanwhile, the US is going, well, we don't know what to do, but we've authorized all of this military aid.
Yeah.
They just signed another massive contract to supply even more F-35 jet fighters to Israel. Mm-hmm. In the middle of this would have been a great opportunity for them to say, no, we're not going to give you more of these. Pull your head in. There is more military aid coming from the US to Israel in the middle of this. And they're happy to bomb Yemen. And meanwhile, Ukraine is begging for more artillery rounds because they're running out. Like, this is the thing. There's been so much hand-wringing over, we can't give too much support to Ukraine. We can't do too much. But then everybody's writing a blank fucking check for Israel instantly while they're doing genocide. It's infuriating.
And here's the latest.
Sickening.
Here's the latest news. It's alongside this, related to this, maybe so. It's not directly Israel and Gaza, but 3 US service members killed in Jordan drone attack, Biden says. Now, I was watching One News tonight, and there is now a lot of conversation of what happens with America about that now. And now that New Zealand's just basically said, yes, we'll come help you in the Red Sea, could that then have us involved in other action in the area? This is not quite breaking news, but it's recent news, and we'll have to wait to see how they're exactly going to handle it. 3 US service members have been killed and at least 25 others wounded in a drone attack in the northeast Jordan near the Syrian border. The United States military has said, while we're still gathering the facts of this attack, we know it was carried out by radical Iran-backed militant groups operating in Syria and Iraq, President Joe Biden said in a statement yesterday, US time, today, our time. And so because of the, I guess, hostilities in the area at the moment, and because the connection perhaps between Syria and Hamas, what happens next? What are we going to be dragged into? What is the world going to be dragged into? Because of that one extra event that's happened in the region as well, that now all of a sudden, and I'm not saying this lightly, please don't, every life is worth something, but the Americans will see 3 American armed servicemen as so much more valuable than 30,000 Palestinians. And so what will that lead to? That's the next question, if anything.
I did see a very good analysis of that, of how the US tends to react to servicemen near a war zone getting clapped like that. Mm-hmm. There tends to be an underreaction to try and de-escalate.
Right.
Then there is another attempt to de-escalate, and then there is, if it happens again, a massive overreaction.
What was it called? What was the 1990s Desert Storm? Not Fire and Fury. It was
Fire
Death
and Fury.
Was it Fire and Fury?
Shock and Awe.
Shock and Awe. Yeah. Then comes the Shock and Awe. Yep. Wanted to watch the space. We'll keep you updated. But also wanted to talk about this ruling that Netherlands, the courts have said that Israel has to make it available for aid to get into the area. This is a story from the weekend. Hamas. Now, this is pretty much an unverified story, so we'll take it with a grain of salt. Hamas says Israel killed 20 waiting for aid in Gaza. Authorities said Hamas-run Gaza Strip said Thursday that Israeli forces had killed 20 people waiting for humanitarian aid to be distributed as Israel pressed its blistering assault in the territory. Israel has launched a relentless offensive in Gaza in response to the Palestinian militant group Hamas's unprecedented October 7 attacks. They always have to get that in, eh? That's, I have to always make sure that Israel is justified in their response no matter what. The Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza said the attack occurred on the outskirts of Gaza City in the north of the territory, with 150 people also wounded. Hamas said the incident amounted to a horrific war crime. Palestinian militant group Islamic Jihad said they were killed by artillery shells and missiles, a claim AFP was unable to verify independently. The Israeli army did not immediately respond to AFP's request for comment. So they didn't respond. They didn't deny it. Doesn't mean that it's 100% true. But I mean, look, let's say whether that's true or not. Yep. Let's say this is true or not. We don't know 100%. But I think it's pretty fair to say civilians have been killed. Civilians looking for aid have been killed through this process. It's an impossibility to think otherwise. Whether this one has happened exactly as it's been reported or not, I guess we don't know. Where do you want me to go?
Just down to that paragraph that we're highlighting. I just want to talk to people. Like our chat's usually pretty media savvy, but still, I would look at these paragraphs here as containing quite loaded language. It's not untrue, but the choice of words really tell what angle this is coming from.
Yeah.
The Hamas-run health ministry.
Yeah.
Well, yes, Hamas is the government in Gaza. They haven't had a free and fair election for 15 years, but yes, they run everything. But it has to mention Hamas because Hamas is a terrorist group, so we'll put that in there.
Which is why I said they have to mention October the 7th, and I'm not saying that to minimise October the 7th, but what that does is give Israel carte blanche to do whatever they want because it's a response to a horrific terrorist attack.
You know, Hamas have said that it amounted to a horrific war crime. Palestinian militant group Islamic Jihad. You know, it's that Western good guys, you know, Islamic bad guys language writ large. So, you know, I'm identifying a bias from this article. It may be. I'd say it probably is telling factual statements, but it is loading the words that it's using to communicate that through.
If you go on to the next part of the story, it says witnesses said they had been targeted by Israeli forces. People were going to get food and flour as they had nothing to eat. Abu Atta Basal, the uncle of one of the injured, told AFP. Suddenly tanks appeared and started firing shells at the people who were cut into pieces. We were heading to get flour and they shelled us 4 times and some people were martyred and injured, said Mohammed Al-Rifi, who was injured in the hand and leg. The casualties were brought to Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City, where bodies were seen lying on the floor, an AFP journalist said. So there's,
that's a more balanced.
Yeah. And look, an AFP journalist has seen bodies in the hospital. Again, that's going to happen in a quote unquote war zone. I just think that it's unmistakable that there have been innocents killed. We're never going to challenge that, and I guarantee there's been some people who have been looking for aid and ended up being killed. Whether this is exactly it or not, wait and see. I wanted to also show you one other thing. You know, we talked about from the river to the sea, and how to supporters of Israel, it is seen as one of the highest defences to be used. The supporters of Israel, they see it, they claim to see it. I don't know if they're being honest actors or not, but they claim to see it as meaning an eradication of Israel and all Israelis from the river to the sea. Most in the Palestinian camp see it as a cry for freedom, to be free in the region they live in, from the river to the sea. But the thing I want to say is, I want to be clear that supporters of the Israel say that this chant, this saying, this slogan is incredibly offensive. Addendum, when Palestinians say it. When Israel says it, you don't hear a fucking word. This is Benjamin Netanyahu, and I'm actually going to read it because for those of us in the audio podcast, you won't be able to see the subtitles, so I'll read them out as they come up. This is him just in the end of last week, I believe. In any future arrangement, settlement or no settlement, Israel needs security control over all territory west of the Jordan. This is a necessary condition and it collides with the idea of sovereignty. What can you do? I tell the truth to our American friends, and I also attempt to impose a reality on us that could harm Israel's security. The Prime Minister needs to be capable of saying no to our friends and say yes when possible. Say no when possible, say yes when possible. Sorry, my dyslexia kicked in right in the middle of that. Now, the reason I wanted to play that was the part about controlling the security from the Jordan west. Now, here's the Jordan, right? Otherwise known as the river. And west of that is the sea. So when Netanyahu says from Jordan west, what he's saying is from the river to the sea. So
and I don't think that's a poor choice of words. That fits exactly what Israel has been doing for decades, nibbling away at the West Bank, punishing Gaza.
The point that I wanted to make clear to everybody, and I'm going to poke the borax a little bit, poke the bone at the mainstream media, is there is a lot they're not currently picking up on. Now, whether they missed this or whether they're just choosing not to report it, whenever someone of profile says from the river to the sea, the media goes into an uproar. Whenever the highest profile Israeli in the world says they want security and control from the river to the sea, which includes Gaza and includes the West Bank, not a peep. Not a peep shall be heard. So much like when a pro-Palestinian voice comes on the television, the interviewer insists that they denounce Hamas and the actions of October 7th, which we have denounced here time and time and time again. But when a pro-Israeli voice comes on, they never, ever, ever get asked to denounce innocent civilians being killed. Which is why, if you're new to this show, I said at the end of last year, we're going to stop doing that. We're going to stop having to make sure people go, oh, but you denounce the actions of Hamas, don't you? Because we do, we will continue to do so, but I'm not going to play the game, and we're not going to play the game, when you see loaded language painting one side as the bad guys and the other side as the good guys. In this conflict at the moment, war crimes, atrocities, terrorist actions have happened by Hamas and by Israel. There is no question that both sides have committed and are continuing to commit egregious, horrific, unhumanitarian acts, in Israel's case, daily at the moment. So we'll report what we're seeing, but we're not going to be apologising or defending our positions because I don't think we need to. Chewy, do you want to correct me or pick up on or anything from there?
Yeah, I'm definitely not flag waving for Hamas.
No, of course
but
not.
There are so many questions and lies around the October 7 attacks. Like, I'm not denying that the attacks happened, but remember, we were hearing about babies' heads being cut off, and that was disproved. All the victims were killed by Hamas and definitely not by Israeli gunships. That sort of thing. Like, straight out of the gates on October 7, there were questions around that attack and around Israel's knowledge of it and Israel's reaction to it. And I think when you look at Netanyahu's involvement with Hamas and funding of Hamas to create a political wedge and to create a button issue that he can go after his political rivals over, Israel aren't playing a straight bet on this at all. And if we're going to talk about Israel's right to defend itself, fantastic. Defend yourself as you have done for 60 years by being one of the most heavily armed, most surveilled, most technologically advanced countries in the entire Middle East.
Yeah.
Like, remember, Israel has fought wars and won against, I think it's 5 countries all at once. Look at a map and look at how big Gaza is. Look at a map and see how many ways of access in Gaza there are. Is Gaza incredibly heavily armed? Is Gaza an existential threat to the state of Israel? How could it be? It's stacked full of children. I forget what the percentage of it was, of the population that was under the age of 20.
50%.
50%. Absolutely crazy. So when Israel talks about the right to defend itself, what the fuck are they talking about? There is no threat to Israel there. There's no threat to the state of Israel. And I have huge questions over how such a small area with such a militarized wall around it has so much surveillance, drones, cameras, automated machine gun nests, satellite surveillance. the whole works that October 7th attack went on for so long without a response?
I had a conversation with someone over the weekend, not an argument, not a debate or something, and I just thought this thing, right? You know how Israel is bombing hospitals, apartment buildings to get Hamas,
Schools,
right?
universities,
to get Hamas. That's always their point, to get Hamas. I just thought this, right? What would they do if they found that the leader of Hamas was hiding somewhere in Israel? What would they do to get the leader of Hamas? Do you think they'd bomb a neighborhood to get the leader of Hamas? Or do you think they'd tactically and strategically go and find the person? And if they'd tactically and strategically go and find the person, why aren't they doing that in Gaza? Why in Gaza do they tend to flatten neighborhoods to systematically and randomly try and find Hamas, and by the way, kill some of their own hostages while they're doing it? Whereas if it was in their own land, the likely scenario is they would be strategic, they would be militant and small, like SEAL Team 6 when they went after bin Laden.
So there's an example of this from, I think, just Israel cleaned up a member of Hamas's leadership. I think he was number 3. They found him in Syria, and they put a drone through his apartment window and blew him up. They didn't take out a neighborhood. They didn't bomb the school down the road. They knew exactly where he was, that he was home, and they put a bomb in his lap. Now, in the chat, I was talking about that someone was making the comparison that in warfare, civilians always suffer. You know, you look at the Blitz in London and all of that sort of thing. The difference between that comparison is Israel has GPS-guided, laser-guided, night vision, drones, surveillance, the whole works. If they wanted to bide their time and track who they were after, who gave the order, who led the attack, and put 1,000-pound bombs down their chimneys all in one night, they fucking could. And they've done shit like that before. They are quite happy to bide their time. The Israeli Mossad is famous for doing that, for going after Nazi war criminals hiding in South America. They did some mad shit. They're quite capable of it. So I think when you have that capability and you're not using it, that you're essentially carpet bombing a city, street by street. You're using tanks in an urban environment. They're not your scalpel. That's your sledgehammer.
Yeah.
That is a choice. They have made a choice, and that is to steamroller their way through Gaza to make it unlivable.
Yep.
Make it unsurvivable.
Yep.
Destroy the culture, to destroy the education, to destroy the next generation, to make sure these people just go, we cannot stay here anymore. And then Israel will go, wait, well, we'll build those condominiums that we've been talking about. We'll build those oil derricks that we've been thinking about. It is systematic. And if it's successful here, there will be another attack, and it'll involve the West Bank.
Finally, this was in Dunedin the weekend just gone. I want to be really clear that I only managed to get down there. I had a half-hour window. I only managed to get down there for half an hour. So I listened to a few of the speeches and stuff, but this was Dunedin this weekend. If it's happening where you are every weekend like it is down here, this is a obviously pro-Palestinian march around the Octagon.
You're going to say, this has been going on every week since this started.
Yep.
This isn't tailing off.
No, this is, as you're right, this has been going on every single week, and it's continuing on every single week. I think they're taking one at the end of February off for some reason, but it's going to continue on. And, remember, we're 125,000 people in Dunedin. So a few hundred people is not insignificant. So... And they started, people who know Dunedin, they start at the museum, which is now a one-way system, and then they walk like this up to the octagon. This is the centre part of the octagon. And they sit there for an hour and hear speeches and, I guess, talk out what's going on.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Gaza! Free, free Gaza! From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free! From the sea to the river, Palestine will live forever! From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free! From the sea to the river, Palestine will live forever! Hey, Winston, are you listening? Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Hey, Winston, are you listening? Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Hey, Judith, are you listening? Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Hey, Winston, are you listening? Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Hey, Judith, are you listening? Ceasefire now!
Long live Gaza!
Long live Gaza!
And this is the shot from up the top.
Thank you so much.
So that was Saturday afternoon on one of our very regular, beautifully fine days. The group, and like Chewie was saying, every single weekend this happens. Every single Saturday it happens, and it's continuing to happen. And sure, most of us, I'm sure Chewie, you're in the same boat. When we can, we get there, we support people, and we move forward.
So, one thing before we move on, Pat,
Yeah.
we like math, don't we?
I
We're
love
bad at
maths.
it, but we like it.
I'm not bad at it. I love it.
Old Mr. Frodo on Twitch. Hairy folk, have you done the math on how many buildings have been bombed versus how many fighters Hamas have? Is it even possible that every house bombed had a militant in it? Now, I've done some very quick and nasty Googling. So, according to the Wall Street Journal, nearly 70% of Gaza's 439,000 homes have been destroyed. So, Pat, you like maths? What's that? 70% of 439,000.
70% of 439,000. Well, 400. That'll be let's call it 440,000. That's 10% would be 44,000. So 44,000 times 7 is going to be about 20. Let's call it 300. Pretty close to 300.
Okay. So they destroyed 300,000 homes. And Hamas, according to Al Jazeera.com, according to the CIA, actually, Hamas has about 35,000 fighters in Gaza.
Right. So as long as there's one in every 10 houses, then they're sweet as.
Oh, that's good. That's a proportional response.
Yeah.
Oh, we're all good. We're all mad about nothing. Never mind. The math rules out. Jesus Christ.
All right. It's one of these things that it feels like we don't want to. We and I'm determined, and Chewie is as well, to keep this at the forefront of our conversations. I'm a little bit embarrassed that we had lots of coverage of Ukraine on the early days, talking to reporters in the Ukraine, and it kind of just became yesterday's news. And we're not going to do it with this. This is not going to become yesterday's news. We're going to keep talking about it. So,
and part of that is I will always be framing this about there is a classic good guy, bad guy conflict, which we shouldn't be all hand wringy and I don't know, bad stuff happened in World War II. The fight in Ukraine is still happening. And that is just very clear cut. And I see this Israel Gaza thing as a distraction. Like the real fight is still happening in Ukraine, and everything that spins out of this is a distraction for that one core mission, in my mind, at least.
Yeah, right. Okay, we're gonna move on. I know that Guru's just mentioned something that we're going to get onto in the next couple of days. The UNWRA workers.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Look, we're aware of that. We're not going to tangent on that tonight. I have some irons in the fire to get some people to talk about that. So, check mark.
Your numbers are correct.
Check that. Yeah, 13 people out of 30,000 workers.
Multiple countries just go, that's enough for us. Cut funding. Absolute bullshit.
Now, let's have a look at our own homegrown nightmare, otherwise known as David Seymour. He delivered his State of the Nation over the weekend. Now, let me tell you something, if you weren't aware of this. It is my honest held belief that this was a fundraising episode for ACT, and a way to slap the back of funders pre-election. I'll give you the reason for that shortly. Let's have a look at the story from the weekend about this. Mr. Seymour is still going on that he thinks his treaty will bring people together. God only knows how.
David Seymour is pushing back against claims the ACT Party's Treaty Principles Bill is creating division. Dozens of supporters attended his station.
Look, I know, I'm sorry I just started. How the hell can you push back against that? Like, how can you push back against that? Because it's creating division. Like, you can say it shouldn't be, fine, you could have that opinion, but to say it's not, how can you when it is? It's like 1 + 1 is 2. He thinks 1 + 1 is doormat. It's because it just is.
In Auckland today, where the party promised to deliver real change to all New Zealanders. Isabel Prasad reports.
As you always say, Chewie, not necessarily good change, but just real change.
No, different change.
Well,
not good.
The scones were a hit. It was an appetite for change, drawing in the ACT Party.
I wanted to highlight the diverse nature of the audience as well. Okay, just have a good look.
They're the same colour as
today.
the scones people.
I'm very excited to hear that there is a real change coming for the country.
We face a time when there's increasing division.
The one that springs to mind is probably crime, the safety in our houses, the safety in our businesses.
David Seymour addressing their concerns in his State of the Nation speech.
New Zealanders are ready for change, and if we don't take care of their concerns, then someone else will.
But it's the party's treaty principle.
I think what he means, I actually watched the whole speech twice. I do it so you don't have to. That's worth the super chat or two. As he was talking about another government after that. Again, I think the mainstream media has done a particularly bad job of actually breaking down what was said. We will help out mainstream media as well. So I believe from memory he was talking about another government will come along.
It's just a really weird threat. Like, if we don't do it, someone else will. It's kind of a threat.
Yeah, it's like he's saying China will pop up and they'll do the change. It's that sort of vibe. I get it. And that's he's speaking to the right audience to have that kind of vibe about it. Trust me.
It's just
Principles
bizarre.
Bill, that remains front and centre.
We believe we can persuade New Zealand that this is a good idea that will unite New Zealand.
The bill has been taking over political discussion. The Prime Minister saying his party doesn't intend to support it past its first reading.
I don't intend to fall down the stairs tonight after the show, but it might happen. But my intention is not to.
And I certainly don't intend to go into my living room and eat ice cream by the fistful. But I might change my mind.
Like hand, literal hand?
Yeah, I don't like doing dishes, so
No,
just
fair
use my hands.
Fair enough.
Making it possible, and if people want it to continue, then I suspect that our coalition partners might decide they do too.
Christopher Luxon in recent days handing over responsibility for the bill to David Seymour as Associate Justice Minister.
Now, this is a really interesting question, yeah? I brought it up on here. ACT leader David Seymour will become Associate Justice Minister with responsibility for treaty principle bills. Now, here's my question. Why do you need a minister responsible for treaty principles bill if it's going to stop at the first reading? Why do you need to create a ministerial position for something that's got no traction and is going to go no further? I might sound like a bit of a conspiracy theorist, but it's a genuine question, Chewie. Why do they need a ministerial position to look after something that's going to be dead in 4 weeks' time?
Because they don't want us to think that far ahead.
Right. Or
like they're just talking about the first reading. Don't think about anything else.
Or
we're not going to support past first reading.
Or it's not going to be dead. We'll have to wait and see.
They want the media to front the message that national, like, even though they're not saying it, they're not saying we are definitely not going to support this. We have no intention of supporting it.
Yeah.
They're two different statements.
And remember, people, and I'm not trying to beat us up too much into the good books here, but there's still been no other media outlet that I've heard yet raise the question of conscience vote. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Mr. Luxon goes, we'll make it a conscience vote, and National doesn't support it, but funnily enough National MPs do to get through. So I'm just putting it out there. No one else has been saying that as far as I know yet. It's just a possibility.
It's all weasel words.
Yeah. Yep. All right, we're going to
means nothing.
We'll keep going with the story.
I think it just makes a lot of sense that the person who is driving the idea can talk to the government officials and make sure it's done right.
It sends a message to Māori that Christopher Luxton is not going to listen to Māori. He is okay with his ministers attacking Māori.
Despite widespread protest action and the Kingitanga's Unity Hui, ACT says it has no intention of backing down.
If we say that the treaty principles debate is divisive, what we're really saying is we can't do anything where people disagree in this country.
It was very, very...
He's still a shit, eh?
Fucked.
Because both things can be... because you can say something's divisive and still debate it. He's basically saying... If we can't, if people think it's divisive, then we can't. No. You can debate it till the cows come home, and it can be divisive. Both things can be true. It's a completely terrible way of worded it. Let me say as well now, this is Professor Margaret Mutu. She is booked in to come on the show tomorrow night. A couple of things we have to organise yet, but she is booked to come in on the show tomorrow night at 9.
Very clear. He wants Te Tiriti o Waitangi rewritten. And any consideration of Māori having any say in anything in this country, gone.
The issue's likely to be a focal point at Waitangi celebrations.
Yeah, no shit.
Remembering that it is a marae, and you always respect your manuhiri. But we're also very clear with our manuhiri. If you have cause defence, you must expect to be told so.
Based on the comments that some people have made, it will be more tense than other years.
Tension with no release in sight.
And Isabel joins us now. Kia ora, Isabel. Along with addressing hot topics here,
we're going to move on from this conversation because we've got more about the David Seymour conversation as well, including the actual speech, which I think we need to get to because lots of things happened in the speech that we haven't talked about. Do you want to drop anything on the story first, or are you happy just to keep trucking and we'll...
No. I did have a joke about referring to Seymour with the phrase "no release in sight," but that's gross.
So here's the conversation, right? That this was a fundraising, the national speech, the speech of the nation. I mean, like, why would you do a speech for the nation? No, what would you do it? The state of the nation. Why would you do it? What's the point? Who wants it? Like, that's what I thought last weekend. It's like, why is he doing a state of the nation? What's the point? And the point is, in my honest held belief, it was a thanks for being funders before the election, and it was a fundraising exercise in and of itself. Let's play this first 60 seconds.
And the amount that people have invested in getting us here so far, their time, their advocacy, their donations, never forget, please. People will come because they want to support this kaupapa. And we suddenly find ourselves here at a time when New Zealand needs to fish or cut bait. I think that's why so many people have come out. But for whatever reasons you may have, I want to thank you for buying a ticket, getting up on a Sunday morning, and being here because you care about New Zealand.
So, did you get it?
Oh,
buying a ticket.
At New Zealand.
No. I want to thank you for buying a ticket. People came to that event and paid to be there. I want to thank you for buying a ticket. People paid to be at his State of the Nation, and you would have heard it very clearly, him making some kind of jovial about never forget the money, the funders and the donors. There would have been people there, in my opinion, who would have funded them into the election. So there's the back slap. And the fundraise for today was a bunch of those people, most of those people had to buy a ticket to be at his State of the Nation. It was a fundraising, I was going to say scam, not a scam, event, Chewy.
It's mental that he's doing that now, that he is part of the government and 4 years away from an election. Like, This is the thing, that they were more successful this time around fundraising than they have ever been before. And they represent 8.6% of the population. Like, they have no worries about money. He could have just had that come down and have some scones and talk to David, your boy.
Yep.
Could have for free. But no, he's got his hand out to these people. Again. Here we are in a cost of living crisis, and these people have enough money to pay to go and see David Seymour talk on a Sunday morning. Yuck.
The part of the conversation that I probably got most upset with, which was the part I'm going to play right now, when he quotes someone who I'm quite passionate about. Have a listen to this.
Or it could turn out to be just another spectator to ongoing decline until some other government, perhaps with some other ideology, takes the path of our country somewhere else entirely. So a wise man once said, you get one shot, one opportunity. New Zealanders are ready for change, and if we don't take care of
he just quote Eminem?
Then someone else will.
You know, a wise man once said, you've got one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted. In one moment, would you capture it or would you let it slip? He's quoting, I'll give him this. At least he's not playing Eminem music like National did and having it be a lawsuit. But he's citing Eminem, and that has left me cold, Chewy, to my bone.
So, as someone that spent most of his teen years being desperately uncool, I can recognise it in other people. And I'm surprised that David Seymour isn't in a wheelchair for breaking his back from self-cringe every time. I just want to beat him up for his lunch money. It's disappointing enough that 8.6% of the population voted for that man and his idea.
Can we also?
I'm gonna give some credit to him. He keeps telling us what we need to do. He has been very clear that he expects his coalition partners to do what people tell them to do, to support this treaty principles thing or not. So we need to tell them that we will not stand for it. Hold your nose and email a national MP, email Christopher Luxon, email your local MP. We have to tell them. We can't be silent on this shit.
I just also wanted us to have a look at the audience one more time. Have a look at the audience. Have a look at the blue rinse brigade, the bald heads, the white hair. What do you think they'd be thinking if they knew he was quoting Eminem? Because rap music, you know, evil, nothing good to say in that rap music stuff, Chewy. So, there was one other clip I'm going to play you as well. Where is it? 2:58? No, that's not the one. It is the one at 4:37. Because something else that he said about the USA, right? He went to the US for a summer holiday. Notice no one ever kind of says of David Seymour traveling internationally. You know, Golriz raked over the coals. Anyone from the Green Party who travels and has an overseas holiday raked over the coals. Seymour in the States for his summer holidays, not a peep. I did wonder about this, and if he ever came on his show, I'd like to ask him, how does Mr. Seymour feel that if you use America as an example, his voters are the MAGA movement from America? Where the MAGA movement would sit in America are where his voters sit in New Zealand. The equivalent. Now, that doesn't mean that he's necessarily Trump, but those people who, if they lived in America, would vote Trump are the people who, living in New Zealand, vote ACT. Far, far, far more than National. Probably split between ACT and New Zealand First this time around, but certainly ACT. So here's the last part with him sharing his pearls of wisdom about being in the US and his conversations with people in the South.
I asked dozens of Americans, who's going to win your election this year? Now, full disclosure, I was in the South. But the most common answer, in fact, overwhelmingly, was Trump. Why? Because life was better before. And because...
Which is actually not true if you look at what Biden's done and what's happening with the stock markets at record highs and stuff at the moment. But that's the narrative. That's the game they play. It wasn't better before, was it? Not in the slightest.
It's my favourite. He has, quote, steel balls. It's not like there's too much writing on it. And then I would say, well, yeah, but what about all these court cases? Oh, that's just a jack-up because he's winning. Now, I don't want to take sides in another country's election, of course.
Of course you
Let
don't.
me just say this.
Of course you don't, because you wouldn't believe in Trump, but your supporters will. So of course you don't want to take sides. That would be detrimental to you.
Any democracy needs trust in its institutions. And when half the people think the leading Republican candidate is corrupt, and the other half think that the justice system is corrupt for saying so, then you've got a problem of division, something that I think is resonating around the world.
Now, here's the point I want to make about this. Half of people in America think Trump is corrupt. The other half think that the justice system is corrupt. Basically, is what he's saying. Now, I don't know if it's half and half, but there's a big portion on one side that think that, and there's a portion on the other side. What Seymour didn't say, because you could say the same thing about the upcoming referendum. Half of New Zealand don't want to see it, half do. What he's not saying is, though, just because there's division doesn't mean that one side's not wrong, or doesn't mean that one side is correct. I mean, it does mean. You can still have division and one side of the conversation be right. You can still have division and one side of the conversation be wrong. His American example, half of the people are wrong. The justice system is not stacked against Trump. Trump is stacked against Trump, and he's in big trouble. In the weekend that's just gone, another $83 million case was filed against him for defamation. So half of that audience is wrong. And I'd like to bring it back to our referendum and go, is it possible now that this division that we're seeing, which is there, but there's actually a perspective within that division which is right and a perception which is wrong? Just talking about, and Chloe says this all the time, just talking and having a debate about the principles of the treaty, fine. Actually, not a problem with that. That's a good thing in our democracy. The way he's doing it, the way Seymour wants to do it, as I'm paraphrasing a bit, but as Chloe Swarbrick often says, is a binary, completely the wrong way to do it. And I just thought that was telling. He talked about 50-50. It's like these people who think, well, if we're going to have a debate on the vaccine, we should have equal representation of doctors who think it's dangerous and doctors who think it's not. Hang on, it's 99.999% on one side and 0.00001% on the other. You don't get to have a 50-50 conversation with that. Division doesn't mean multiple opinions that are correct. Chewy.
I think that's the point. You see it a lot in the way that David Seymour talks, as he frames everything as a 50-50. And he's talking about his anecdote, right? I also have come back from the States. You may have heard. And I have also spoken to dozens of people about their upcoming election. And you know what, Pat? Do you know, you'll be shocked at this. 99% of the people that I spoke to, out of the dozens of people that I spoke to, despise Trump and are afraid for the future of their country.
Wow.
Now, what's the difference there? Seymour was traveling in the South. That might be something.
Yep.
I was traveling San Francisco to Colorado. Colorado is not exactly a left-wing haven.
Good for their weed, though.
Yeah. But, they've got Lauren Boebert as their representative.
Only for one district, though. But yeah.
But I was speaking to cattle ranchers, and people with cowboy hats and trucks and stuff like that, and they despise Trump. Yeah. So it's not 50-50. JK in the chat here says 64% of Americans think Trump should be prosecuted, 30% think it's all fake. That's not a 50-50 binary. That's not what David Seymour's talking about.
Yeah.
And I think for him to pigeonhole America from his brief to one part of the state, and I would imagine talking to one demographic of people, like if you went to a KKK rally in fucking Tennessee and asked them, who do you think is going to win the election? They're going to go, hail Trump. You can't come back and use that as an anecdote going, well, 100% of the people that I spoke to reckon that Trump's going to win it. It's ridiculous. And he will always talk about this binary. Yes, we're a divided country. Here's a newsflash, David. We have always been a divided country. and we will always be a divided country.
Yeah.
But people think different things. We have an election every 4 years to find out how divided we are. How do we divide up our country into what we want it to go forward? That's democracy, something that he thinks that he's standing up for. What he's wanting is a country with no division, which certainly sounds a lot like, let's get rid of political parties altogether and just rally behind my pink and yellow banner and on to the future. You know, he's not a serious thinker, and a lot of people that follow him are just following the jingo, that gut feeling, that really ugly lizard brain thing of, I think brown people are getting it too good. They're also all criminals, and I'm scared because of the crime. And I've come from South Africa where it all fell apart, and I want to just rewind it back to where it was good for my people, but I want to do that here in New Zealand.
I just had a thought.
People baffle me, and that's division.
Had a thought. Maybe someone in the chat can look this up, because I'm looking around. There's lots of things called Atlas Foundation or Atlas Charity.
Mm-hmm.
He was just said he spent a lot of time in the southern states of America. I just wonder where the Atlas Foundation sort of head offices in America are. I just wonder. I mean, I found some that were in Texas, but I don't think it's the right Atlas Foundation. I just wonder where they're based. I wonder if just purely by chance, that they're based in the southern states of America. Just a thought. We could have a look at that while we're watching the next story. Hey, last story for the night, guys. And it's more of a public service announcement, really. And don't panic because you're seeing Rumour there again. You don't hear a word from me on this. Chloe Swarbrick this morning got the opportunity to clear up a bit of a misnomer. There's stuff going around the internet at the moment about her being involved with Golriz Ghahraman and the accusations around there. So she was on the AM show this morning, and Lloyd Burr asked her directly, is that her in the video? Did she know anything about it? And I thought it's appropriate because the mainstream media, she says in this clip, it's the first time she's been asked, given the chance to clarify it. So we want to amplify that for her as well. Have a listen.
I just talked to you, asked you, Chloe, about the Green Party's start to this year. Did you know about Golriz and what she was doing in shops?
No. And I think, again, basically, you know, the co-leaders here have outlined absolutely everything that was known at respective points in time, and you'll know that this is an active case currently before the courts and before the police. So that's what we're dealing with, and I think that a line needs to be drawn under that. She has resigned, she's taken full responsibility for her behaviour, and obviously made it abundantly clear the mental distress that she was under as well. Because
there's some CCTV footage, I'm not sure if you've seen it, and it looks like you're in the background. Is that you?
No, it's not me, Lloyd. And I guess thanks for being the first person in mainstream media who's put that directly to me on live television. But I'd say that what's unfortunate... Hang on,
are you saying that's unfair, or...?
No, I'm saying that what I have seen in the past few weeks and months, and actually my last 6.5 odd years in the parliamentary political sphere, is that time and again we have seen real mis and disinformation whipped up online, and that has meant that particularly women and women of colour in our parliament have been the centre of those online maelstroms. And yeah, I guess it's just a really gutting situation, a really sad situation on all fronts.
And I think no one would disagree with you on that, because it is super sad.
Yeah, it's been awful, just to be frank.
Yeah, I've seen the abuse and stuff that she's received ever since she became an MP, even before she was an MP. Had she talked to you about it and the toll it was taking?
Yeah, I think that every young woman in Parliament, every woman in Parliament, most parliamentarians are pretty upfront with each other about the abuse that we receive. And, you know, every so often, whenever this conversation comes up, largely at the back of something awful happening, like has recently occurred with events, we see that the kind of public discourse becomes about the importance of prioritising mental health and having good conversations about those. But then you also see, on the other hand, this conversation that if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. Well, why aren't we turning down the heat? Why aren't we talking about how we build a working environment that is conducive to actually getting the best out of people? Because, you know, whichever way you look at it right now, our parliamentary institutions institution is not the system that you've designed to get the best out of people or to make the best possible kinds of laws. So I think that that is the discussion that we should be having, and it's one that, you know, the opportunity has been paved for us with the likes of the Francis Review.
And has Celia Way-Brown joined the party yet?
She will be on Tuesday, yeah, so she'll be sworn in then, and we're really excited to have her in our largest ever Green Party caucus. I mean, she herself has obviously said that these are not the terms that she'd like to be coming in with, but we have a fighting fit and ready caucus to take on this government and its pledges to continue to harm people on the planet.
Awesome, thanks.
There you go. So that was just, I thought it was appropriate to get out there and let people know, and because there's been rumours out there and we try and squash rumours when we can. On another note, Atlas Network is based in Virginia, which technically would be a southern state. So there you
go. Yeah, like we need to look a lot harder at like, we could do a whole show on Atlas, to be honest, and what they've been up to. But there seems to be a consistent theme going after Indigenous groups and stoking that in colonial countries. So yeah, I don't know. What are they after? Global race war?
Something like that. I think
they've got a lot of money.
Yeah, I think Gareth sent this through
$3.49
when I talked about having to watch that interview 3 times. So I appreciate the $3.50, Gareth, the super chat. Buy me a coffee. We'll buy the coffee with that. A half coffee, at least, something like that. I don't know. Depends how much they are. Okay, well, that's everything I've got lined up for tonight. Did we come to a conclusion on tradies charging us to bring their vans to us to charge us or not? I think that we all think that sucks. Is that the sum total of it?
I don't think they're working. Just come and fix my pipes.
That's
not a euphemism.
Let me just say as well, I said that Professor Margaret Mutu would be joining us tomorrow night. She said yes to it. We just had to figure out how to connect. So yes, that is going to be a plan for tomorrow night. Because I'm just telling you again, because there's a lot of people in the chat who seem quite excited about that. The last message I got from the professor was with her phone number saying, give me a call. But of course, we need to connect over the internet. So I'll just double check that's all doable. And then you can expect to have Professor Margaret Mutu tomorrow night at 9 p.m. All right, Cho, anything else, sir? Anything you want to lead us with? Any words of wisdom? Any beard care advice?
I've had my renty pants on today. Like, I mean, while I was away on my summer break and that sort of thing, I kind of purposely avoided the news, and I'm just dipping my toes back into everything, and it's just infuriating, and it is disheartening at times. And I cast back to some of the shows that we did before we wound up at the end of last year about how to deal with that, and it's just like, well, just try your best to link up with people and try to move the needle in your own way, and there's no wrong way to do it. I'm a firm believer that and what we need to do over the coming years is communicate with government better than we have been, and it's real easy to find politicians' email address.
Communicate more easily and more firmly. Someone in the chat, did you see this? Did you star it? It's quite funny. Someone in the chat talking about how I'm an angry man.
I did see that. That's
quite
hilarious.
funny.
First of all, it's very hurtful to me because
you're the angry one.
I'm the angry one. Did we switch the name tags at the bottom?
Maybe we do it tomorrow night. And look, there were people in the chat who also said back to this person, no, not angry, just direct, and that's true. However, if there was any cause out there to be angry about, civilians at the bottom of rubble when their apartments fall down, thanks to missiles being fired, and children and women and civilians in that rubble, that would be the time to get angry if one was going to. So we'll just leave that right there. If that doesn't make you angry, avoidable deaths of civilians, 2/3 of which are said to be women and children, if that doesn't make you angry, then I think that probably says more about you than about your accusation of me. Just quietly.
I just want to say, with everything that's going on, like what we've been discussing, Israel, Gaza, Ukraine, Yemen, all of this sort of stuff, the flim-flammery that's happening to our own democratic process here, the results of our election, all of that sort of thing. It takes a supreme effort for me to not just come on and just directly scream for 190 minutes every night that we're on. So be thankful. Be thankful, people.
We are thankful, Chew. We're thankful that you're here, and thank you for you guys being here tonight as well. We enjoyed your chats in the chat. It's all very, very good. We have a plan at the moment, and we haven't talked to people about this yet, but of having some other mods starting up in the chat. You know who you are, who has connected with us and said g'day, offering themselves. So that'll be happening hopefully this week. So if you know who you are, then we'll probably be in touch this week. Other than that, I guess we'll be back tomorrow night. And as I said, Professor Margaret Mutua said yes to 9 o'clock tomorrow night. Just got to confirm that she's able to connect via the internet connection, which I think will be fine. And other than that, we'll be back for another show tomorrow night. And another, yeah, one, Chewy's Anger. I like that one. I thank you, Gareth, for the $9. I think Chewy's Anger could be a new source of energy. It's fucking renewable too. Trust me. I've seen it many times. So it is.
Feed me another news story. I'll light up another suburb.
BJ, appreciate the $10 super chat there, mate. All the best. All right, guys, we've got to go now. We'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hero News. Until then, stay safe. Remember, come back tomorrow night. Bring a friend. We'll catch you then. Hooroo.
Cheers, fam.